On Thanksgiving morning, November 27th, 2014, Ron Ingraham set out on a routine fishing trip and vanished. He was 67 years old, a lifelong fisherman who lived alone on his 25-foot sailboat, the Malia. Moored in Kaunakakai Harbor on Molokai, the boat was more than his livelihood. It was his home. The sea was the only life he had ever known. That morning, Ron left for Manel Bay on the neighboring island of Lanai, a route he had made countless times before. The plan was simple: fish, sell his catch, and return in a few days. It was ordinary, familiar. Nothing about it seemed dangerous, but somewhere on the open water, something went terribly wrong. Ron disappeared. Search crews looked for him for days, but found nothing. Eventually, the search was called off. Back on shore, hope was fading. Ron was presumed lost at sea. But somewhere in the Pacific Ocean, Ron Ingraham was still alive, pulled into a desperate struggle against hunger, exhaustion, and the open sea. He would not touch land again for 12 days. Ron Ingraham grew up in the South Pacific, the son of a Navy SEAL, and he had absorbed the ocean early, its rhythms, its logic, the way it behaved and misbehaved. By the time he was operating out of Molokai, he had decades of open water experience behind him. People on Molokai said he wasn't just tough, he was generous. He shared his catch, and he had once saved a fellow fisherman's life by performing CPR after a heart attack on the water. His son, Zachary, speaking to CNN after the ordeal, compared his father, half-jokingly, to Rambo. "The sea is both his life and livelihood," Zachary said, "and he is tough." Even so, what happened next would test the hardiest fisherman alive. While anchored off Lanai on the evening before Thanksgiving, Ingraham noticed foul weather picking up and the Malia drifting dangerously close to the rocks. Without pausing to pack his usual supply of food and fresh water, a decision that would define the next 12 days, he jumped aboard, cut the lines, and pulled up anchor to save his vessel from the reef. He battled all night against a strengthening current, the weather coming down hard, trying to hold position or make headway back toward shelter. When morning came, Thanksgiving Day brought exhaustion. Ingraham made a decision. He gave up fighting the current and began traveling with the prevailing winds. He put out a Mayday call, reporting that the Malia was in danger of sinking. The Coast Guard picked it up. A crew arrived in the search area within the hour. They found nothing. No vessel, no debris, no sign of the Malia or the man aboard her. The Coast Guard later acknowledged the uncertainty directly. They said they did not know if the boat had taken on water. They asked themselves if it had sunk. It had not. But at that moment, the ocean had already swallowed Ron Ingraham whole. As the search began, Ingraham was fighting the worst of it, alone. A massive wave struck the Malia, pushing the mast into the water and throwing Ingraham into the Pacific with it. He was 67 years old, in the open ocean, at night, with 20-foot waves driving through. But he had a rope. He later described what he did without drama. He said he had a rope on him and towed himself back in. He pulled himself back onto the Malia. The storm had killed his engine and destroyed his radio's antenna, cutting off any chance of further transmissions. He had no way to call for help. He had whatever the boat held and whatever the ocean would give him. He began to fish. The search that followed was extensive. Coast Guard crews and Navy aircraft flew 59 missions covering 12,000 square miles of Pacific Ocean, using MH-65 Dolphin helicopters and HC-130 Hercules aircraft. His last confirmed position on November 27th placed him 46 miles west of Kailua Kona on the Big Island. Searchers worked outward from there. Pattern after pattern, they came up empty. The problem wasn't effort, it was physics. Wind and current were pushing the Malia faster and further than drift models predicted, carrying her well outside the probability zones the Coast Guard had calculated. With each day that passed, the ocean was quietly relocating Ron Ingraham to somewhere no one was looking. On December 1st, 4 days into the search, the Coast Guard made the call. They suspended the operation. Lieutenant Scott Carr, the Coast Guard spokesman, described the decision plainly. He said it was a really tough decision to suspend the search. He noted that in 21 years of service, he could think of maybe a couple of times where the Coast Guard had suspended a search and then found somebody. "It is uncommon," he said. Having suspended the search, the Coast Guard contacted next of kin. That meant finding Zachary Ingraham, 43, living in St. Joseph, Missouri. Ron and Zachary had lost touch. More than 15 years had passed without real contact between them. The first news Zachary received of his father in over a decade and a half was that the Coast Guard presumed him dead. Zachary told CNN what happened in those first hours. At the beginning, there was the shock period. You hold out hope, then you get hit with the reality slap. But something in him refused to accept it. He called the Coast Guard back and said, "I don't think you should call off the search. I don't think he's gone." He was right. Out on the Pacific, hundreds of miles from where the searchers had been looking, Ron Ingraham was still alive and making decisions. He had left without his usual stores of food and fresh water. The Malia held whatever had been aboard before the trip, not enough for 12 days of open ocean survival. His fresh water ran out, so he turned to the only source available to him. He caught mahi-mahi and tuna on handlines every day, and he ate them raw. He later told reporters that he lived off the moisture of the fish he caught. He said, "I'm a fisherman, so I caught fish. It was not as good as a sushi bar, but that is how I hydrated." Every day, he told the Molokai Dispatch, he got a little weaker. The lack of water was killing him, not to mention the mental part. The days started blending together. The routine became survival's own logic. Fish in the morning when they were active near the surface, bail when the waves came over the hull, watch the horizon, rest when possible, begin again. He picked a course and held it, navigating by the trade winds, the only constant available to him without instruments. He was slowly, imprecisely, making his way back toward the islands. But the effort was costing him. Then the doldrums hit, a stretch of dead calm, no wind, no movement. The Malia sitting still on a flat sea for 2 days. There was nothing to do but wait. He later recalled what he said to himself in those hours. "It is in God's hands." His friends on Molokai had not given up either. Dedrick and Jerusula Manaba, who had been among his closest companions on the island, were pushing anyone who would listen to keep looking. They had refused to plan a funeral for him, even as others around them made arrangements. Jerusula Manaba would later say simply, his family knew not to count him out. By day 12, Ron Ingraham had drifted to a position approximately 64 miles south of Honolulu. He was weak, hungry, and dehydrated. His engine was inoperable. His radio's antenna was gone. He had, by most measures, nearly nothing left. He tried one more thing. He took a wire coat hanger and fashioned it into a makeshift antenna, rigging it into the water-damaged radio. On the morning of December 9th, he keyed the transmit button and put out what he later described as a garbled transmission, barely a signal, barely intelligible, 8 seconds long. The exact words, captured by Coast Guard audio and reported by NBC affiliate KHNL, were these: "We got a Mayday here. Mayday. This is the Malia. Anybody picking this up?" The USS Paul Hamilton, an R. Lee Burke-class guided missile destroyer operating in the area, was 14 miles away. Its crew heard it. Ingraham looked out the door of the Malia's cabin and later described what he saw: a battleship doing 38 knots coming right at him. Commander John Barsano, the Paul Hamilton's commanding officer, brought Ingraham aboard personally. Crew members gave him water, food, and a shower. They also attempted to repair the Malia's inoperable outboard engine. Lieutenant Carr, speaking for the Coast Guard, said they received a Mayday call from him and that a Navy ship nearby responded. He was weak, hungry, and dehydrated, but alive and uninjured. Before leaving the Malia to be towed, Ingraham made one thing clear to his rescuers. He said he was not leaving without his boat. The Paul Hamilton towed her in. Ingraham arrived back at Kaunakakai Harbor on Molokai early on December 10th, and the Malia pulled in behind him. Jerusula Manaba and her husband Dedrick were there at the dock. She brought him a lei. Her husband brought cigarettes. Ingraham's first request to the friends gathered to meet him had been simple: did anyone have a cigarette? When he stepped onto dry land, he kissed the ground. He told reporters what the 12 days had felt like from inside. He said he thought he was going to die. He said he hung in there and that it took mental discipline. He called the rescuers real heroes who save people's lives. He said he owed it all to them. To the AP, he said, mentally, physically, and spiritually, "I got my butt kicked." That night, Ron Ingraham got on the phone with his son. It was the first real conversation between them since the 1990s. The normally gruff Fisherman got emotional. He told reporters that getting a hold of his son was really huge and that it was a beautiful part of the whole thing. He said it was all he could do to stop himself from crying when he thought about it. Zachary, calling from St. Joseph, Missouri, called it the best Christmas present ever. He said they picked up right where they had left off. He took out a loan to fly to Molokai to see his father, and he told Ron he would be there as soon as he could. Ron, for his part, spoke with unguarded pride about a son he had not seen in decades. He told the Molokai Dispatch that he has an 8-year-old son and that his son is going to college. His face was full of something that 12 days on the open Pacific had not touched: a father's pride, intact. In the days after the rescue, the Molokai Dispatch found Ingraham back aboard the Malia, docked safely in his slip at Kaunakakai. A few small fish still lay on the hull, last resort provisions he had not needed. He pulled a pot of spaghetti from the cabin. He was home. His friend Jerusula Manaba had brought him something else at the dock, alongside the lei and the cigarettes, an emergency position indicating radio beacon called an EPIRB, and she had made her meaning clear: don't you do this to us again. Survival isn't one dramatic decision. It is 1,000 small, correct ones made in sequence, without knowing if any of them will matter. Ron Ingraham fished when he had nothing to eat. He rationed the moisture from raw fish when he had no water. He picked a course and held it when he had no instruments. He endured the doldrums when there was nothing to do but endure them. And when he had almost nothing left, weak, dehydrated, 12 days of Pacific sun and salt behind him, he bent a coat hanger into a radio antenna and transmitted into the void. The USS Paul Hamilton heard it, and Ron Ingraham came home. Here is what this case teaches directly. Carry a properly registered EPIRB with a current battery and know how to activate it. The Coast Guard confirmed that airplanes picked up only a faint signal from Ingraham's emergency beacon, and no GPS position was ever transmitted. His friends on Molokai understood this so clearly that the very first gift they pressed into his hands when he stepped off the boat was a new one. A properly maintained EPIRB transmits exact coordinates to rescue satellites within minutes of activation. 12 days might have been 12 hours. File a float plan with someone on shore who will act on it. Dedrick and Jerusula Manaba pushed the Coast Guard not to give up, and Zachary Ingraham challenged the suspension of the search directly. That pressure matters, but it works faster when rescuers have an exact route and expected return time to work from, not just a general area. Never leave on a passage without your provisions, regardless of how short the trip is supposed to be. Ingraham departed without his usual stores of food and fresh water because the emergency at anchor left him no time to pack. One grab bag stored permanently aboard, ready to go, would have changed his calculus on every one of the 12 days that followed. Do not rely on a single piece of electronics for communication and navigation. Ingraham's radio antenna was destroyed in the same storm that killed his engine. A handheld VHF radio in a waterproof case, stowed separately, costs under $100 and weighs almost nothing. It is the difference between one radio and 0 radios when it matters. Know how to improvise a radio signal with what you have on the boat. Ingraham's coat hanger antenna, fashioned on the 12th day of his ordeal, is the reason this story ends the way it does. Basic knowledge of emergency radio improvisation is a legitimate survival skill for any mariner. His son Zachary put it simply. Somehow, he managed to MacGyver a way to make that last call, and it saved his life. Understand that the Coast Guard suspending a search is a resource decision, not a final verdict. Zachary Ingraham refused to accept the presumption of death, and he was right. If someone you love is missing at sea and the search has been suspended, keep pushing. The ocean has a way of hiding people that has nothing to do with whether they are alive. And when everything else is gone, the antenna, the engine, the water, the daylight, try the coat hanger. Try the thing that probably will not work. 12 days in, Ron Ingraham did exactly that. It worked. What survival decision do you think you would make differently out there? And what is the one piece of gear, after hearing this, that you would add to every boat you step onto? If this story stayed with you, please like this video and subscribe for more true survival stories that honor the people who live them and teach preparedness to those who have not had to yet.